Greetings, Internet. The long and winding morning inevitably leads to the podcast because I record one of these every single day. And one of these recordings ends up becoming When Is Now. I don't know which one it's going to be. It could very well be this one, or I could just be shouting into the ether right now and nobody will ever hear this but me, and maybe not even I will ever hear this again. But the only way I find out is if we get to the end of this shit, and maybe it'll be the one, maybe it won't. Either way, you just gotta record this shit because if you want to have something good come through, you gotta show up for it. And it won't always be good, but if you want to be able to get to the ones that are good, then the minimum you have to do to receive that is to show up. So, Internet, this one is to showing up. May we all have the perseverance to show up to the shit that we want, even when it is not what we might call pleasurable, especially when it's not pleasurable, especially when it's difficult, when it's tough, when you don't feel like doing it, when it's just like, ugh. For me, that was definitely yesterday. I did not feel like recording this yesterday. The day before yesterday, I had a shitty day at the poker room, and it carried on into the night and followed me into the morning, and I was just kind of meh feeling in the morning. And I just had a slow start, and then my roommate came home early, and I usually like to record the podcast before my roommate gets home because it's, I don't know, it makes me feel self-conscious to record when somebody else is in the house, and it's just easier when I have the whole place to myself. So I had to record it with somebody in the house yesterday, and that was just making me be in my own head, and I had low energy, and it was just, I really did not want to record yesterday, but I forced myself to do it, and I did do it. I sat here for an hour hating just about well, I guess I didn't hate the whole thing. I do think the first half hour was pretty rough, but after the first half hour, I think I kind of caught a bit of a wind, but I mean, still, it was pretty clearly an episode that was purely for practice and had no chance of ever being aired on any sort of platform. So it was just, I didn't feel like doing it. It was difficult to record. It was difficult to stay in the moment and just flow and have a recording with no dead air. Especially knowing that, no one's ever going to hear this. I'm probably never going to hear it. It was just tempting to just stop and delete it and to never think about it ever again, but I did the full hour. There wasn't, I don't think there was any dead air, or there wasn't much dead air. And I saved it, so I can go back in the future and listen to the recording that felt impossible to do, but I got through it, and now that's something. It sucked to do it, but now I'm glad that I did it, because now I know I can get through shit like that. There was one particular aspect of that podcast that was really kind of jumped out at me. I kind of had the feeling that there was two wolves inside of me fighting, and the one wolf was the one that wants, the podcast as the perfect job and the perfect career, and then the other one was like the self-doubt, the I'm not good enough, I'm not talented enough, I don't know if I deserve this. And it was like they were kind of like both going at each other in me during that podcast. Just me wanting to quit and not wanting to do it and just wanting to take a day off was, the negative mindset wolf, and the positive mindset wolf was just like, nah, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna do this, and even if it's terrible, we're just gonna fucking do it. And by the end of the podcast, I was like, fuck yeah, the wolf that believes is the wolf that won. And it was not an easy fight, it was back and forth, and the good wolf definitely took its licks yesterday. It was, some wounds, not super deep wounds, but it was a well fought battle. And I guess we should feel thankful for days like that test us. Because how would I know that doing this podcast is truly what I want to do if there's never a day where I'm tested? And I think yesterday it was definitely a test with the low energy and the self-conscious shit and all that. It would have been very easy if I wasn't dedicated to this to just say, fuck it, not go through a day like yesterday. It would have been very easy. Would have been very easy to just, say, fuck it, I guess I don't really want this that much, but I do want it that much, so I got through it, and I guess the message I would want to carry for the people out there is, when there is something that you truly want and those two dogs are fighting inside you, think about which one you want to win, and think about what actions you're going to take to embody the winner. Are you going to let the negative mindset one win out? Are you going to listen to the voice that says you're not good enough, you can't do it, you can't have it, you don't deserve it, it's not for you, it's for, some other mythical type of human being that just deserves things? I mean, everybody deserves exactly what they want, as long as you're not stepping on somebody's free will or something. I don't know. I mean, everybody basically deserves what they want, I think, in some essence. So I don't really know why we end up getting in these weird thought patterns of thinking that we don't deserve things. Maybe it's just like an internal test to see what we really want. And when we feel like we don't deserve something, like maybe that's just our internal guide telling us that we don't really want it, or we're not ready for it. I mean, I'm sure it serves some sort of purpose. Because the deeper I get into spiritual learning, the more I realize that these negative things that we put all this time and energy into fighting, like the ego is like the big one for me. Like, fighting the ego it is a fight worth fighting, but it's not a fight you want to win. It's just a fight that you're always trying to stay a step ahead of. Because I think the ego is what individuates us from everybody else, which is, I mean, I was going to say is a good thing, but I don't even know if good is right the word. It's what makes this reality interesting, is that we all have the perception that we're separate beings making our separate choices in our separate lives. And that is what makes this reality interesting. It gives us the illusion of separateness. And I think part of the fun of this reality is the illusion. Like, it makes the game more interesting. We wouldn't have come here if the illusion wasn't something that appealed to our higher selves before we came here. So we saw... I kind of wonder if we have, like, an ego in higher dimensions. I think we must, but it's probably, like, more of a bare bones type thing. Like, just enough of an ego to have your kind of individuated separateness, but to also know that everything is created. There's probably some sort of balance there. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, but staying on track, I think it was another message that I was being taught yesterday, was that the ego is kind of like... The ego is like a weed. As soon as you take... Like, once you put your focus on it, it's easy to kind of pull it out and keep it in check. But the second you stop tending to it, like... The image I got was almost of like a weed poking through a sidewalk. You know, you can easily pull the weed out, and then, you know, the sidewalk is good. But the second you stop paying attention to it, the weed just pops right back up. And that's what the ego is like. So we just spend all this time... But I don't think we ever want to, like, defeat it. It's not like you want to kill your ego, because if you killed your ego, I mean, it's almost like killing yourself. And then if you kill yourself, you're just back in the ether. You're back as your higher self. And I don't think we would have come here if we didn't come here for a purpose or an interest, maybe more so than a purpose, since I kind of feel like this entire reality is fake. So the idea of coming here for a purpose is kind of goofy. Like, unless you want to look at the experience that you're trying to gain as purpose, which I guess you could consider that as purpose. But we're just here to, you know, enjoy the whole thing, and we don't have to fight. We don't have to fight, like, every little thing to the death, like the ego. We don't have to fight it to the death. We just have to keep it... I think the goal with the ego is to keep it managed. You know, you don't want your ego manifesting in your relationships, which could look like, you know, trying to prove yourself to your friends, to your parents, to your siblings, to your partner. Like, you don't want to do that, but you do want to have enough of an ego to feel, you know, a separate experience from other people, so that, you know, you can compare your experience to theirs, and they can compare their experience to yours, and that's actually pretty useful. So from that perspective, an ego is very useful, but it's just... You know, all these things are just about balance. You know, it's almost like everything has its place. Good has its place, evil has its place, and they just battle each other for balance. And I think we're just here to try and... I don't know, we're just here to try and achieve balance, I guess. And I think the more we try to stay in the moment and experience our experience, the better we are at achieving that balance. And, like, the more perception that we gain of our reality kind of assists us in achieving that balance. Let's say, you know, somebody farts, all right? And you don't have the sense of smell, you're not going to know that the smell in the room is out of balance. But once you have the perception of smell, if somebody farts in a room, then you know that in order for the room to achieve balance and for you to be able to breathe, you have to crack a window. So that's a that is a very uncouth example of achieving balance through perception. We have to learn to increase our perception of what reality is, and then these new levels of perception that we gain, we can balance through. And the more perception we have, the more interesting the game gets. And I think, we just come here. I don't know, like, if souls. The thing that doesn't make sense to me about spirituality is the soul. Like, how the hell do I even put this into words? So, if we all have souls, right? How come some souls are at like a certain level and then other souls are at a different level? You've got somebody who's like a young soul, and then you have somebody who's an old soul. And the old soul seems to have this experience that's beyond its years, and the young soul is just like raw and learning and trying to figure it out. But like, if we all have souls, doesn't that mean we're all eternal? So why are there some souls that are young and some that are old? That is something that I don't really get how it fits together right now. Like, what is the difference between an old soul and a young soul if we're all infinite consciousness? Is it just is it maybe like all the souls are infinite in the higher dimensions, and then some souls have more experience playing the game? Kind of like, you played Diablo 20 years ago, or whatever the fuck it was, Diablo 2. And then you play Diablo, and then in the 20 years since, you play a bunch of other games. But if you ever go back and play Diablo, like, you will know things that somebody who played Diablo for the first time, like, won't understand, even though you're, like, still pretty fucking rusty and you're still learning all the stuff. Maybe that's how, like, the old soul and the young soul stuff works. I don't really know. If anybody has a satisfactory answer to that question, I would actually be very interested in somebody else's experience or perspective on that question. Or if anybody has like a podcast or something that touches on that in a meaningful way, I would be interested in watching that, because that is something that I feel I don't have a satisfactory answer to that particular mechanic in the universal game. But what else do we have going on? So, the podcast yesterday stunk. Did not enjoy it, but after getting through it, like I said, I kind of had that, good wolf versus bad wolf experience inside my own body, and the good wolf won. So, honestly, after I finished recording the podcast, I actually felt pretty good, pretty high energy, so that was nice. And then after that, had some meditation, and meditation is just like, it's so interesting how our relationship with these different aspects of life can just so radically change just from being in a different place with a different perspective in our life. Like, I used to hate meditating. It's still hard for me to do like the traditional, sitting there Indian style with my eyes closed type meditation. That is still difficult for me to convince myself to sit there and do it for like a long time. I don't usually do it for any more than like 10, maybe 15 minutes. And then I'm kind of over it after that point. But it used to be like just like painful. Like I don't want to just sit there doing nothing, but now I kind of look forward to it, and I can almost like feel in my body when I need it. Like I really feel it in my mind when I need to meditate. Like my thoughts will just be racing and I'll feel restless, and it's like I'll just have this feeling like I want to do something that no thing satisfies. I'm just like, oh, I need to do something right now. It's like, so I'll load up Overwatch and I'm like, I need to play Overwatch, and then I'll play around at Overwatch, and that'll piss me off. And I'm like, no, it's not Overwatch, it's GTA. And then I'm like, no, it's not GTA, it's a podcast. No, it's not a podcast, it's poker. And then play poker, and then like, no, it's not poker. And I just know now that when I get that feeling, that is the exact moment where instead of trying to like do something to satisfy my mind, I need to sit there and just quiet my mind and like lower the RPMs. Like sometimes my brain just gets spinning so fast that there's just nothing it can catch on to. And for me, the best thing to do is to just, sit there, meditate, focus on the moment, focus on my breath, and then just all this like needy, I have to do something energy evaporates. And that's kind of the kind of meditation I had yesterday. After the podcast, I smoked a fuck ton of weed, and then I was just like, all right. My mind was restless, and the games weren't doing it, poker wasn't doing it, so I was like, I definitely need to meditate. So I did that, and it was pretty interesting. Like, the second I just kind of zoned out and got in the moment, it was like the universe just asked me to trust it, which was pretty, I don't know, it was just like a weird feeling of realizing that I kind of just had this mistrust of the universe that was just kind of baked in to the way that I viewed things. And like the feeling that I got was like the universe was asking me to trust it, which is interesting because I'm sitting here fully in the universe's hands. So it's like it seems like the universe could just demand trust from us if it wanted to, but it doesn't. Or it could just make us trust, or it could just show us trust, but it doesn't. It's like this, I don't know, almost feels like a feminine energy. Like it's there, and it offers you the choice, but it doesn't force anything on you. And it was just oh man, what do I even say? The sense is just like, it's just like a very kind, beckoning sort of energy, like just feminine. And like the thing that stood out to me was just that the universe was just offering it instead of forcing it. Like the way that, if you want somebody to trust you, you can't like force somebody to trust you. You can just ask somebody to trust you. And I just never considered that the universe could be something that needed my trust. But then, through that meditation, I was kind of shown that I had this mistrust of it, and that maybe if the universe was actually trying to give me the things that I want, like I just might not trust it. And I feel like I'm definitely in a place now where I'm open to receiving the things that I would like, even if it doesn't logically make sense to my thinking brain that I should be able to have them. And I just think it's interesting that I was shown that the next step is trust. And I think that is something I definitely need to work on. So today, the goal is trust. Just to trust and be open to what the universe has to offer. And I got another interesting thing I got was this feeling that the universe has like something to offer us, and we also have something to offer the universe. Like it's a two-way relationship. It's not just like the universe is here to serve us. We're also here to serve it, and it gets its own growth and its own experience by helping us grow and helping us get the things that we want, and experiencing like our joy and our love as like limited beings that don't have the full perception of what's going on. Like when it can kind of get us to have faith in something that's not necessarily tangible, I think it kind of learns something about itself through that experience. And that's the kind of experience that like the universe, or I don't know, I keep saying the universe, but it could be more like Earth, Gaia, Yahweh. I don't even really know. Like it's just, I think it was kind of like an Earth energy. It was kind of, I'm not really sure like what the fuck the label is, but the experience was, basically to trust what the Force has to offer. And I felt like the universe has something to offer me, and that I also have something to offer it. And I think that's the case for all of us. Like the universe wants to see each and every one of us living our best life and embodying our highest ideals and achieving our deepest desires. Like that's what brings the universe, or that's what brings Earth, or whatever you want to call it, to, that's its experience, is our experience. And it's I think it's reciprocal. So if you want to be of service to the universe, you have to be of service to yourself. And I would ask people not to lose sight of that, and not to feel bad about doing things for themselves. It's just such a weird thing that you see so much in the spiritual community, especially, like, I find the Law of One to be interesting. It's a channeled work, and it's very interesting, the things the Law of One touches on. And one of the first communities I got involved with was the Law of One Reddit, and that Reddit in particular is just fucking pisses me off. Like, there's this idea in the Law of One of there's essentially two polarities that souls strive towards. One of them is service to self, which is, negative or evil, or, your traditional politician that does and says things to get power and influence to further themselves as opposed to furthering the collective. And that's, a service to self, or a negative entity. And service to others is considered positive, good. That is a good being. And most people, when they read that, they're like, oh, I want to be service to others. So they like go out of their way to try and polarize positive by doing service to others acts, which is fine. I mean, it's good to help people if you know how people need help, which I think is often very presumptuous. Everybody needs help in some way, but you never really know if you have the tools to help that person, which is something that I've learned a lot recently. We might think that we have the tools to help somebody, or that we know what they need to know to have their life be perfectly set in order, but I know people have tried to do that to me and have it be something that would actually negatively affect me. Especially like the way my dad is. My dad thinks he knows how I should live my life. But I know if I live my life the way that he thinks I should, that I would be fucking miserable working a regular job and grinding away for 30 years to get a 401k. Like, that would be a fucking nightmare for me. But that's what he wants for me. And that's definitely not what would give me the richest experience of life. So you got to be careful trying to push your views and your solutions on other people. And a lot of times the best thing you can do is to provide for yourself, because you're perfectly situated to provide you with the things that you would like to experience. Like, who knows you better than you? So I think from that perspective, a lot of times it's much healthier to focus on ourselves, because focusing on other people and helping other people, we just don't always know how to help them. I mean, if somebody spills like their pencils all over the place and you help them pick those up, I think that's like the kind of thing that's like pretty clearly service to others in a way that's not sticky. But I mean, you start talking to somebody who's suicidal or somebody who's got family problems, and you start offering your solutions to a situation like that, and then I think it starts to become, what really is good and what really is helping. And you could just as easily be polarizing negative as polarizing positive in a situation like that. And getting back to what I was talking about earlier, it's just like this whole subreddit, they're just always talking about service to others and making that like this vaunted thing that like everybody should strive for, and they're like stroking their own egos about it. I mean, there's like a daily thread of post what service you have provided to others. It's like, dude, are you really serving others if you're coming on the internet after and posting about it? Like, it seems like, didn't Jesus say something about not praying in public? I'm pretty sure he did, but I'm tempted to look that up, but I don't want to fuck up my flow. So you've got that whole subreddit where they're all doing that, and then they're constantly vilifying the negative polarity or the service to self, and it's just like they've just created this circle jerk of good versus evil, and it's just like, I kind of thought the whole point of spirituality was to get out of the dogma, to get out of good versus evil, of heaven versus hell, but people just love their good versus evil. This narrative is just something that people are so hung up on. But I guess that's part of the illusion, and it's sexy to think that there's good versus evil. It's sexy to think that, oh, I am the good one, because when I compare myself to all the evil bads, I'm not like that, so I am a good one. Like, good versus evil, and you can't have good versus evil without judgment. So So in order to judge something as evil and something as good, you have to compare them. And all comparisons are invalid once you realize, I mean, it's fucking called the law of one. The entire teaching is everything is one thing. So if everything is one thing, how are you going to circle jerk yourself off to being service to others when service to others and service to self are literally like united? They're just two sides of a different coin, but they're still the same coin. Like, fuck, these people just don't get it, but you know, they're on the level that they're on. But you know, I don't know, you can't really blame people for that. I mean, I think there's almost no way that like I've completely solved good versus evil in my own conceptualization of the universe. I think I've come a long way from where I was before. Like, I kind of appreciate, you know, the service to self people or the evil people, because they make the reality interesting. If everybody was just kumbaya, holding hands, lovey-dovey all the time, I mean, what the fuck would we be doing all day? Just fucking Christmas carols in July, and there would be nothing to struggle against. In part, I mean, it does seem like we're transitioning out of a lot of this too. Like, it definitely seems like life is getting easier as we move into the future, so I do kind of feel like we're getting closer to that kumbaya type stuff. I mean, more so than not. There's some places where violence is popping up more, but I think in general, we're getting closer to, you know, coming together and solving a lot of the problems that we've historically had. So I do think that is something that's going on, but these negative entities, they provide a useful service to us. I had a really interesting experience with this. So it was roughly 2007, I started playing Second Life, and I was kind of getting disillusioned with video games. Nothing was really going well there. I had my website, and that was successful, but I was kind of falling out of love with Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 2 was kind of shitty compared to Call of Duty 4, so I was just kind of falling out of that. And Second Life was kind of interesting me, and the thing that was interesting me was the role play. They had these role play sims where you would, you know, come up with a story for your character, and then you would go into this city or town with all these people, and you would just play your character, and you would have this thing called a combat meter, and if you got yourself into a situation where you had to fight, then you would do it with the combat meter, and you would have guns. Some people would use swords or knives or whatever. Melee and guns were like the main ways people did combat. And, you know, I was a pretty snazzy video game player at the time, so it was pretty fun for me to be in these roleplay sims with combat when I could just get myself into these interesting situations and just basically shit on anybody. So it was a lot of fun, these roleplay sims. And one of the things that I discovered in these sims, so each sim had like a bunch of groups, and all the different groups would kind of interact with each other. And most of the people in these groups wanted to be good guys. They wanted to be service to others. Like, they wanted to be the hero. And it made the roleplay boring. Like, you had this entire city where everybody was trying to be the good guys, and eventually, I mean, even I was trying to do that at the start. I was like, oh yeah, I want to be a good guy. And I did that for a while, and I was just like, you know, this is actually fucking boring. So at one point, I ended up becoming bros with it was this group called the Shadows, and they were like the bad guys of the sim or the city. So I joined up with them, and when I joined up with them, the game just became completely addicting. And I mean, that was when I really let my website fall into lapse once I got into the shadows, because it was awesome. Like, we were the only bad guys on the entire server. So whenever somebody was doing something, when they were role playing a plot or coming up with a story, we were always at the center of it. Because what the fuck is a story without bad guys? So it was a very interesting experience for me to see, like, the actual role that evil plays in society, in humanity. Like, it catalyzes the whole system. Like, if you don't have a bad guy to struggle against or to fight against, it's like you're bored. What the fuck are you gonna do? You're not gonna have anything to do. It's just gonna be, I mean, I guess it's an experience to just be around a bunch of other people happy, but it's also an interesting experience to have a worthy adversary to struggle against, and to have that adversary be fighting for something that you are diametrically opposed to. And it was very interesting too to, like, kind of write a character. It's like, okay, I'm gonna be the bad guy in this place, but how do I make my bad guy believable? So it was kind of fun to figure out. It's like, okay, my guy is like a misfit or an outcast, and he found this group that, like, it was almost like a gang type relationship. Like, the group is my real family because they chose me when everybody else rejected me. Like, that was kind of the story that I went with. So he was just, like, he was very loyal to his group, and that was kind of the angle I used to get my guy to overlook the maybe the questionable deeds that he was asked to complete on behalf of the group. So that was, like, a very interesting experience, and it really made, like, TV shows and movies interesting too, because I came very sensitive to the bad guys in like, written stories and stuff like that. Like, there's just so many plastic bad guys where it's just like, it's a mustache twirling bad guy that just wants to kill people and hurt people for no reason. Like, one of the cool things that's been going on recently is, like, the depth of bad guys is really changing. Like, the mark of, like, a good piece of media is when the bad guy or the catalyst is, like, relatable in some way. Like, I think, like, Thanos might be a decent example from a recent whatchamacallit, DC universe movie thing. Like, I mean, most people don't agree that you should kill half of everything, but he was interested. I don't even fucking remember. He was just like, it's too much or something. I don't know. I mean, it was more relatable than, like, just some guy who's just like, I want to kill people and hurt people because LOL. Which was a lot of bad guys from, like, the 90s and the early 2000s were like that. But it is nice to see the concept of bad guys kind of grow and evolve and become relatable. And I think part of the energy that we're moving into as a planet is kind of realizing that there's not really any bad guys. It's just people that are experiencing things in a completely different way, and they're going about getting their energy in a different way. For me, I get my energy from doing things that are difficult, like playing a really good game of Overwatch, or doing this podcast makes me feel energy, or playing, like, a great game of poker gives me energy, working out gives me energy, eating foods that aren't highly processed gives me energy. And I think a lot of people that are, service to self or negative or, what people would call evil, I think these people just don't have a connection to energy the way I do or you do, or maybe somebody evil is listening to this and they're just, they're on the evil path because that's what speaks to them. And you know what? Fucking more power to you, I guess. But fuck, what the hell was I saying? I just got completely sidetracked. Oh yeah, where'd they get their energy from? I think a really good example of why people become evil is, think about, have you ever snuck up behind somebody like in a dark room when they're on their computer and they got a headset on, and you just kind of come up behind them and you're like, hey, what's up? And then they just like jump and you scare the shit out of them. And it's like you're not even trying necessarily to scare the shit out of them, or maybe you are because you're evil. But even if you're not, like you get this jump scare out of a person, there's an energy exchange that happens there. That person is sending you like a nice spike of energy in that moment, and you get energized by it. And that's just like a little jump scare. Imagine what happens when you murder somebody or rape somebody or destroy their career. Like, that is a huge surge of energy that you can just take from people if they're willing to give it to you. And that it's just a different way that people go about getting their energy. And I think as time goes on, we're going to be less likely, like, let's say somebody sabotages you in your career, right? Bad mouths you to the boss or bad mouths you to the client and, fucks you up and fucks you over. I think the tendency right now is to fight against that and to put a bunch of energy into that. But when somebody gets you like that and you get angry, like, you start resonating with the thing that they did to you. And they get all that energy, all that fight, all that frustration that you feel is energy that gets sent directly to them, being the catalyst of that event. And the reason we have so many evil people and so many negative beings on this planet right now is because they have something to feed on. They have this negativity to feed on. We give them this energy, and that's the only reason they're here. Like, everything is energy. You have these deep sea vents a mile under the ocean, and it's just a heat source. And because there's a heat source, you have all this life popping up around it. And it's the same way with our energy. If we are willing to resonate with negativity and give people who perpetrate negative events onto our lives, if we're going to give them energy, of course they're going to show up. Of course, higher beings are going to say, yeah, I'm going to come to Earth and I'm going to be a piece of shit because you're going to give me energy. Or, going back to the Second Life analogy, like, people would come up to us and ask us to, like, kidnap them. And there was a lot of girls that, like, would come up to us and be like, will you rape my character? This happened so many times. And I mean, I was not like comfortable with that. Like, I would just be like, well, you guys can do all the raping if you want. I'll watch the door. And the amount of times, like, we would just be sitting in our base and then some random girl would just send us a message and she'd be like, hey, will you guys rape me? And then, the guy I was with was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll watch the door because as soon as you do that, the entire city is going to show up to try and save this bitch. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Like, he's going to town on this chick. I'm at the door with, like, literally the entire city is trying to save her. And it's like 5 minutes earlier, she just asked us to do this. It was just... it's just a really interesting perspective on good and evil, and I just wonder if stuff like that happens with our higher selves, if like we make the same kind of agreements. Like, do we agree to have these awful, horrible lives where these shitty things happen to us just to have an experience? I don't know. But it was definitely a very interesting perspective to have. So to be able to get that in a game, I think was pretty useful. But, you know, if reality is a game, who's to say we're not doing the same exact thing there? I don't know. I guess for me, my perception of good and evil has really changed a lot. Like, I just don't see evil the way I used to. Especially, like, playing games on the internet, you will offer... I guess that's a projection. I see people in video games all the time that are doing, you know, shitty negative things, you know. The amount of times you hear a 15-year-old call you the N-word over voice comms in video games is never short of astonishing. Well, I mean, it's not really astonishing. I've been experiencing that for quite a number of years now. But, like, my reaction to that... I mean, I never took these people seriously. How are you going to fucking take a 15-year-old calling you an N-word seriously over the internet? It's pretty difficult. But... just, you know, these people, like I said before, you know, they're looking for a reaction. A 15-year-old saying the N-word is a kid exploring the effect that they can have on the universe socially. And, you know, the kid knows he can't go to school and do that, right? So the only place he feels he can do that is the internet. So he does it on the internet, and he sees the way people react to it. And I think the wrong way to react to an experience like that is to be like, shut the fuck up, dude, you're being a piece of shit, you're being racist. Like, that's giving him the energy that he's looking for. He's like, and he's just gonna say, oh, well, look, I'm getting a reaction. And so much of what we do is specifically for that, is to get a reaction. So when you give these people a reaction, it doesn't even really matter if it's good or bad. And sometimes I get the feeling these people don't have the depth perception for good or bad. They're just, you know, they're just looking to have an impact on the universe. Like, maybe they have a shitty life at home. Maybe they don't... their parents didn't show them the difference between positive attention and negative attention, so all they know is attention, whether it's negative or positive. So they just do negative shit on the internet to get attention, because that's the only way they know how to get attention. So now when I hear somebody doing shit like that, I just kind of engage with them and just ask them, like, why, or like what's going on, or just, you know, just not like take them serious and not feed them my energy. Like, I try and get them, how the hell would I explain it? Like, when I play Overwatch and somebody is just like, they come after me, or they just start saying crazy shit, like, I'm more, you know what I would say? I would say, what is it? Playful curiosity. Like, that's the kind of energy I come at these people with now. Like, I don't take them seriously, but I am, like, interested, like, why are you taking this path? Like, what is causing you to do this and say this? Like, even when they're coming after me, like, I play Overwatch, and I think I play decent Overwatch most of the time, but that doesn't stop people from saying, you're a fucking piece of shit, you're awful, switch to this character, switch to that character, I don't fucking think you should be doing this or doing that. Like, they will come after you for fucking anything. And what's interesting for me is just to be like, all right, like, first I'll just agree with them if they say like I'm shit and my character's bad and I'm playing like ass. I'll be like, oh yeah, sorry, I'm not up to your standards. Like, what would you actually like from me? And just like, because nobody ever gives them that reaction. Like, usually when somebody in Overwatch starts like telling you that you're shitty and you need to swap characters, you're just like, fuck you. And that's usually the energy they get. So I don't know. I just think it's funner to flip situations like that on their head, and sometimes they just go harder in the paint and they never come around. But every once in a while you get a guy to like come around and just be like, oh yeah, I'm just fucking around. Or they'll just be like, oh yeah, you're actually cool. It's like, whatever, dude. Like, you just get really interesting reactions from people when you don't like resonate with their negativity. When you don't respond to their negativity with negativity, you'd be surprised. I think you'd be surprised the kind of interactions you can have with people sometimes. Even if it was somebody that like maybe you thought was shitty or not cool at the beginning, you might feel differently at the end just by giving them space to unpack whatever the fuck it is they're trying to unload, even if it seems like what they're trying to unload is this thing that you don't want or you're not interested in, you know. Sometimes you'd be surprised what's in there. So, yeah, I just don't think I have much else to say on good versus evil, and I believe it's just as well because our hour is now up. So, in summation, if you enjoyed this particular podcast, you may indeed subscribe to the Patreon for a monthly fee that will cause more of these to be made in the future of a higher quality. If you cannot do that, then you can like, comment, subscribe, or not. In either case, I will catch you next time. Peace out. Later.